Welcome to Urban Odyssey Audio. This is where we chase the shadows of truth. The ones hiding just beneath that neon glow of the mainstream. Tonight, we are going on a crucial deep dive. We're analyzing this huge stack of source materials, and they allege the existence of these ancient occult covenants.
Yeah, and we're exploring how their practices, which are, well, they seem to be everywhere, might actually be structuring our modern reality.
It's an investigation into the machinery of power. We're trying to illuminate this forbidden knowledge under like a really harsh forensic light.
And we are peeling back layers of deception that, according to these documents, have been intentionally placed over thousands of years to distract everyone.
Right.
We're asking the big question here, the one from the source material. What if the divisions we see everywhere, Christianity versus paganism, or even Satanism versus Wicca, what if they're just decoys?
Intentional decoys.
Exactly. The narrative here suggests that the real global elite, the ones running everything from fraternal orders to, the foundations of modern psychology, are all secretly unified by one thing.
And what's that?
A core Luciferian doctrine. It's a conspiracy that, they claim, spans all of deep history.
And our mission here isn't to preach, it's to act as guides through this difficult terrain of documentation. We're pulling out the most shocking, the most relevant parts of this hidden agenda.
Yeah.
So over the next half hour or so, we're drilling down into three core revelations from these materials. First, we're going to look at the claimed convergence point of these seemingly opposite structures.
They're like Freemasonry and major religious hierarchies.
Exactly, at the highest, most secret levels. Second, we're looking into the hidden mechanics of, non-physical control.
Which includes the occult origins of modern hypnosis and this alleged intentional fracturing of personalities and victims.
And third, we'll break down the structure of these elite occult covenants themselves. We're going to analyze the specific spiritual forces they allegedly call on, like Legion and this terrifying concept of the Archdukes of Hell.
It's an immersive and, frankly, a pretty disturbing journey into what these sources call the spiritual war zone of our society, a war hidden in plain sight.
It really is. So before we get into it, remember to follow @officialurbanus on X. We do live threads and analysis as we drop these revelations. Okay, let's unpack this, starting right at the beginning. So the sources we've gone through, they suggest a history rooted in this really deep ancient conflict. They describe the top tier of secret societies not as, separate clubs, but as a sophisticated interlocking system.
One source calls it a Chinese puzzle box of evil.
A puzzle box, what does that mean exactly?
Layers within layers of deception. And the narrative traces this whole spiritual lineage way, way back.
The beginning of organized dark power.
Right. Specifically to the pagan mystery religion established by Nimrod, which, historically, is placed right after the Great Flood.
Okay, so this ancient root, detailed in texts like Masonry Beyond the Light, what's so crucial about it? Why does it matter?
Because it wasn't just, simple sun worship. It was built on a core philosophy of polytheism, the belief that God is the universe, so everything in it is divine.
Everything.
And most importantly, it established a cyclical view of history. This is the key.
Why is that difference between linear and cyclical history so vital to the argument in these sources?
Well, a linear view, like you find in Abrahamic religions, it has a beginning, a moral framework, a fall, and a definite end, a clear path.
For judgment and, restoration.
Yep. Right. But the cyclical view that Nimrod's cult promoted, it rejected all of that. It embraced the constant death and rebirth of nature.
And that became the ritual core.
Exactly. Centered on the myth of the dying and resurrected godlike Osiris or Tammuz. The sources say this regenerative process of nature, especially sex, became the object of worship. This is the fountainhead.
The fountainhead from which all other mystery religions flowed. So if that's the source, how does it survive for thousands of years to reach, the power structures we see today?
The documents argue it never died out. It just adopted new vessels, put on new masks.
The hidden hand theory.
That's the one, operating behind the scenes. And this is where the convergence theories get really complex and honestly pretty disturbing.
So the sources allege that at the very, very top, these institutions that seem like total opposites are actually secretly unified.
We're talking about massive global organizations here.
Huge.
The documents claim that institutions like Catholicism, the old Roman Catholic Church, and high-degree Freemasonry all converge at their peak.
All unified in doctrine.
but operating on a strict need-to-know basis. It's kept completely separate. The rank and file, the regular churchgoer or the Blue Lodge Mason, they're given these false allegorical interpretations of their own symbols.
So they're deliberately misled.
About the true spiritual agenda, yes.
That's a profound level of deception, targeting their own members.
Yeah.
And the history of the Knights Templar, which is in the sources, that really illustrates this blending, doesn't it?
It's a perfect example. The Templars, they looked like this devout, martial, crusading order on the outside.
Right.
But historically, they were accused of blasphemy, of worshiping the idol Baphomet.
And Baphomet, I mean, that's the goat-headed figure, right?
A composite, hermaphroditic, goat-headed man animal, yeah. And according to these sources, that's not just some medieval superstition.
It's a representation of Lucifer himself.
That's what they claim.
Mm-hmm.
And that this figure was then adopted as a key esoteric symbol for Masonry. It marks this foundational link between military, religious, and occult power.
And that alleged lineage brings us straight to the modern decoys. The sources are very specific about how the modern occult scene has been well managed.
They argue that modern Wicca is an artificial religion. It was created to be this, palatable entry point for the masses. The claim is that they just cleaned up continental Satanism a bit. They took out the really shocking criminal stuff, but they kept the core spiritual energy. The sources flat out state that the spiritual difference between the two is non-existent.
So it's a rebranding.
It uses themes like nature worship, ecology, feminism. It makes hardcore paganism more digestible for a counterculture audience who would never, pick up an actual grimoire.
And this leads right to the founder's lineage. We need to get into the specific occult current here.
Right. The sources claim that the founder of modern Wicca, Gerald Gardner, worked extensively with Aleister Crowley,
The infamous Crowley.
who the sources repeatedly call a satanic figure. The connection is rooted in Crowley's magic, which is tied to his spirit guide, Aiwass.
And Oiwas in this context.
Is presented as another name for the ancient Egyptian deity Set.
Set, the brother and rival of Osiris, the god of chaos and destruction.
That's the critical link. Set is destruction. He's chaos, the inversion of order. So if the sources are right, the serious Wiccan apprentice eventually runs into this very aggressive, very destabilizing, magical current of energy that comes straight from that Set-Aiwass connection.
And this convergence, it really solidifies when you look at the core beliefs taught in the highest, most guarded degrees of Masonry.
The texts quote high-level Masonic authorities over and over. Albert Pike, especially.
What did he say?
He instructed his initiates to maintain the purity of the Luciferian doctrine.
Okay, let's stop and break that down. This philosophical inversion, because this is where the real shock of the source material hits. What exactly is the Luciferian doctrine, according to Pike?
The sources claim Pike positioned Lucifer not as the devil, not as the enemy of God,
But as
the god of light and good, the bringer of illumination and science.
wow.
In this philosophy, Lucifer is in an eternal struggle against Adonai, who Pike calls the god of darkness, responsible for all cruelty, hatred, superstition, and ignorance.
That is a complete, deliberate inversion of, well, all conventional Western religion. Lucifer isn't the enemy of the creator God. He's his equal.
An equal in a dualistic struggle, and in this occult view, he's the champion of humanity and reason.
So the core philosophy of high-level Masonry is alleged to be pure philosophical religion, rooted in the belief of Lucifer as the true light-bringer.
And it's not just academic, it's operational, it's energetic.
Glean.
The sources claim that the huge amount of energy generated by tens of thousands of lodge meetings all over the world through ritual, ceremony, swearing oaths
Very that focused energy.
is intentionally collected. It's alleged to be sucked out of the temples and delivered directly to Lucifer as worship.
So the unsuspecting Mason in the lower degrees, doing his duties in good faith.
Is unwittingly fueling the very entity his own religion supposedly condemns.
And the mechanism to keep all this secret is arguably as shocking as the doctrine itself, the blood oaths.
Oh, yeah.
I mean, if the sources detail these oaths in the highest degrees, penalties like having your body severed, your heart ripped out, your skull smote off, as the York Rite oaths allegedly commit the Knight Templar initiate to.
Right.
We have to ask, doesn't that just scream that there is something of immense existential value being protected?
It absolutely does. The material insists these secrets aren't just, ritual knowledge or networking tips.
Oh.
They're the spiritual currency, and it must be guarded at all costs. The severity of the penalties, it just underscores how serious the commitment is, even if most of them don't understand the real theological implications until they reach those top illuminated levels.
Focus on secrecy and control. It's a perfect segue into how this network allegedly controls its victims. So moving on from the ancient origins and the hidden doctrines of the elite, we have to look at the specific, actionable ways these conspiracies allegedly maintain secrecy.
And how they control victims and establish these spiritual strongholds.
The sources dive really deep into the world of trauma and psychology here. Specifically, they focus on the exploitation or even the creation of multiple personality disorder, MPD.
Now known as dissociative identity disorder, yeah.
Right.
And that's right. The source material, especially blood on the doorposts, alleges that coven leaders use MPD as a deliberate tactic.
To ensure permanent secrecy.
Exactly, especially among satanic ritual abuse survivors. The mechanism is horrifyingly precise.
How is this intentional fracturing supposed to be achieved? And why this specific disorder? Why is it supposedly perfect for control?
Well, the theory is that extreme abuse and trauma sexual violence, threat of death, ritual shock is inflicted on a child.
And the mind just fragments. As a natural defense?
As a natural defense, yes. But then the coven leaders exploit that. They organize the fragmentation. The traumatic truth gets buried deep inside what the source calls a rat's nest of split identities and altars.
And these altars are conditioned.
Conditioned through repetition and pain to protect the secret at all costs. It prevents the core personality from ever speaking or even remembering the abuse.
So it's either a natural defense that they've learned to systematically exploit.
Or, in the worst and most organized cases, it's a fully artificial, trauma-based creation of the perpetrators themselves.
And the sources go beyond just the psychological framework. They insist these fractured personalities aren't just in the mind.
No, they become spiritual points of entry. The material talks about them being infested by demonic forces that act as, like, organizational leaders or strongmen.
So who are these strongmen?
The text identifies one common, extremely powerful presence in these cases, the entity known as Legion.
Legion.
The material suggests Legion is often present when a person suffered severe sexual abuse or defilement as a child. Which means, they believe, that virtually all SRA survivors have a Legion problem.
What's unique about Legion, according to these documents?
Its nature, which comes from the biblical idea of many, is that it's many different genres of demons all rolled into one.
So it can manifest in different ways.
A multitude of different faces, personalities, symptoms. It often completely obscures the true nature of the infestation during any kind of therapy or prayer. The obfuscation is intentional.
And the physical or behavioral signs of Legion? This is critical because the sources claim it creates a perfect mimicry of mental illness.
It does. The texts detail this paradoxical behavior that Legion produces, which often leads to a severe misdiagnosis.
For example?
Well, the afflicted person might be hyper-compulsive, obsessively neat, tidy, a rigid perfectionist, often struggling with anorexia or bulimia, and intensely afraid of germs. Or, conversely, they could be on the total opposite end of the spectrum, obsessed with decay and filth, wallowing in waste, compelled to perform scatological duties, or drawn to self-mutilation.
So it's one extreme or the other.
Exactly. This duality, along with symptoms like severe insomnia, bursts of superhuman strength, unusual physical endurance, it's claimed to create a precise look-alike for MPD.
Okay, so that's where my critical analysis kicks in. If Legion creates a precise look-alike for MPD, how, according to the authors, can anyone, a therapist, a minister, ever definitively tell the difference? How do you distinguish between genuine psychiatric DID and a sophisticated spiritual infestation designed to mimic it?
That is the central problem the source material grapples with. And the authors, who are often deliverance ministers, they insist that without applying specific spiritual authority, binding and casting out the entity, the psychological root will never be accessed.
So pure clinical means won't work.
They say it's impossible. The entities are so skilled at deception that they feed off the psychological and chemical imbalances. The symptoms are identical, but the cure, according to them, requires spiritual intervention.
Moving up the hierarchy, the material then introduces this terrifying layer of demonic protection that's reserved only for the elite practitioners.
Yes. High-level Satanists, those in what they call the Brotherhood, or those marked for special leadership roles, are allegedly assigned a spiral, profoundly powerful entity, an Archduke of Hell.
To serve as a personal spiritual bodyguard.
That's the term they use.
What is the function of an archduke, and where do they fit in the power structure?
The archdukes are described as high-ranking spiritual authorities, not common demons. These are entities with significant regional or systemic influence. Their job as a bodyguard is to provide unparalleled spiritual defense.
To stop outside spiritual intervention or prayer from getting to the Satanist?
Correct. And while the source notes that the term archduke is an occult doctrine, not a biblical one, the presence and power of these beings is reported consistently by high-level Satanists who eventually sought help. It suggests a very real belief and spiritual manifestation within that specific occult world.
This whole exploration of control, it inevitably leads us to question the methods used, both by the abusers to induce trauma and, critically, by some professionals trying to help the victims.
Right.
The sources are extremely critical of hypnosis.
Extremely. Noting its origins are firmly rooted in shamanism, witch doctoring.
This is a critical truth checkpoint for our listeners, I think, especially anyone involved in therapy or wellness.
Definitely. Hypnosis, no matter how benign the therapist's intent is, it creates an altered state of consciousness.
A passive, suggestible state.
And the sources all agree that passivity is one of the most dangerous, most vulnerable states for a person to be in. It makes them a prime candidate for demonic attack.
And this spiritual risk isn't abstract. It's explicitly linked to a specific entity.
They allege that using hypnosis can potentially invoke the spirit of Pythoness, or the spirit of divination. It's a force referenced in the New Testament.
Python.
The Pythoness was the priestess of Apollo at Delphi, the most celebrated oracle in the ancient pagan world. So by creating a trance state to access hidden knowledge or memories, the sources argue that hypnosis is functionally a tool of divination and sorcery. It's designed to impact the soul, not just the physical brain.
So on one hand, you have a direct spiritual danger. But on the other, the material also flags a profound clinical danger, the risk of contamination.
Yes, this is the paradox. Therapists, as the source says, are often prone to fads and bandwagons. So the document warns that if a therapist becomes really focused on the SRA narrative, they might unknowingly contaminate the patient's mind with false concepts or leading suggestions during that highly suggestible hypnotic state.
So they could unintentionally create false memories.
Or false positive diagnoses of SRA, which tragically makes it exponentially harder for genuine victims of satanic abuse to be heard and to get the help they desperately need.
The idea that the very tools meant to heal are actually opening spiritual doorways or contaminating the truth, that's profoundly unsettling.
It is.
Okay, let's run a check on one final crucial mechanism of control that runs through all these sources. We call this the truth meter segment. We're going to examine the claim that ritual objects serve as intentional demonic access points, known as object links.
The sources confirm this is a core, widespread, consistent part of occult doctrine. An object link is an occult term for a physical item.
An object, an artifact.
Right. It's used to establish a link through which magical or demonic power can travel across a distance to oppress a victim, influence someone, or even bind a piece of property.
So what specifically are these loaded objects? How are they used?
They fall into two categories, according to the sources. First, something taken from the victim.
Like a lock of hair, nail clippings, a piece of clothing.
Something that holds a biological or energetic connection. Second, and often more insidious, is something created or charged by the magician.
An idol, a small object.
A tiny object, a religious artifact that's been magically charged or loaded with demonic energy, often through worship or ritual. This charged object is then placed on or near the victim or hidden inside their property.
And there are some really strange anecdotes in the source material about this.
Indeed. One example details a couple dealing with extreme oppression in their home. They found tiny nails driven into the walls in the shape of pentagrams. They also found odd masses of metal hidden behind their bedroom walls with a metal detector.
To spiritually bind the property.
That's the intention, according to the sources. Another, even more shocking one, describes a woman who developed this persistent ring-shaped rash over her sternum. A doctor later investigated and removed a thin stainless steel ring from under her skin. No medical reason for it, no memory of how it got there.
A physical implant as an access point.
Precisely. The source claims that occultists sometimes use metal implants, often placed in areas corresponding to occult chakra points, like the crown of the head or, critically, the third eye region.
As a legal ground.
A legal ground for the archdukes and other entities to keep their troops inside the person until that foreign object, that object link, is removed.
So it could be a tiny safety pin or a sophisticated implant.
Yeah.
It's all a tangible mechanism of spiritual bondage.
That's the claim.
Okay, so given the sheer consistency of this claim across all the literature, from deliverance ministry to occult history to survivor accounts cited in the material, all of which confirm this practice is central to their doctrine, we have to rate the claim of object links as 95% plausible as a mechanism within these occult organizations. The belief system itself confirms it.
So if these occult structures and the spiritual laws they supposedly follow are thousands of years old, as the sources claim,
Then the most pressing question for us today is, how do they manifest their influence in the 21st century? How do they control governance, health, society?
the sources say it's maintained through two main interconnected methods:
Which are?
deep infiltration into key societal pillars and the propagation of a specific spiritual state known as illumination.
And that illumination is the ultimate personal goal of high-level occult practice.
And this goal has a physical and symbolic link that goes right back to control. The ambition is to completely open the Ajna chakra, the third eye, located between the eyebrows.
And this process is symbolized by the all-seeing eye.
Which, in Masonry, the sources claim represents the eye of Lucifer himself.
And what is the alleged result of achieving this total illumination, this complete opening of the third eye?
The sources claim the result is having your brain just utterly flooded with the pure consciousness of Lucifer himself. You achieve a state of gnosis secret, perfect knowledge.
And there's an interesting intersection here between drug culture and occult practice that the documents highlight.
A deliberate one. Hallucinogenic drugs, LSD, mescaline, psilocybin, even marijuana, were considered powerful initiatic tools in early modern witchcraft. They were designed to shock or blow open this third eye.
To force the consciousness into a state receptive to this Luciferian light.
So it suggests a concerted effort, using both ritual and chemical means, to achieve the same state of spiritual vulnerability and reception.
Okay, so moving from the esoteric rituals to the pragmatic realities of power,
Yeah.
how is this influence maintained on the ground? The infiltration strategy seems absolutely critical.
It is. The sources stress emphatically that serious Satanists are not on the fringes. They're not wearing black cloaks in graveyards.
No, they're described as pillars of the local community.
Doctors, lawyers, judges, clergy, and even police. That's how they avoid exposure.
That suggests a long-term, very sophisticated infiltration strategy focused on controlling the justice system itself. Why those professions?
Because they're the gatekeepers of information, law, and punishment. The coven, often guided by its alleged demonic masters, specifically targets law enforcement and the judiciary,
Sometimes using lower-level networks like the Masonic Lodge.
which provides a ready-made network of professional influence. Yes, the primary goal is to make sure that ritual crimes, child abuse, rape, homicide, are hidden from public view.
Yeah.
The sources say there's no machinery in the police system for classifying or reporting crimes with a satanic flavor, and those they've infiltrated in the judiciary make sure the cases are suppressed or misclassified before they can even be prosecuted.
They suppress the evidence chain before it can begin. But the sources also suggest that when bodies are found, the discovery itself is sometimes strategic, almost performative.
That's the component they call spiritual terrorism, the strategic finding of a victim's body or performing some highly public ritualistic horror. It's an act intended to strike fear into the community.
While making sure the crime can't be traced back to the coven members, who are the local elite.
It reinforces the coven's spiritual power over the area and ensures compliance through fear.
Now, if we broaden the lens even further, the material suggests that seemingly benign cultural and wellness practices are also vectors for spiritual influence.
Creating doorways for attack.
This is where the ancient current of Masonry allegedly merges with the massive modern New Age movement.
It's an explicit connection in the sources. New Age leaders are allegedly telling their followers that Masonry will be the political and spiritual channel through which their expected Christ, who most New Agers call Lord Maitreya, will manifest on the world stage.
A political and spiritual channel.
Yeah. Benjamin Krem, a prominent prophet for Maitreya, states that through the Masonic tradition, the necessary global process of initiation will come. It will reveal Freemasonry as the secret heart of the occult mysteries, waiting to be purified for its final purpose.
That is a staggering implication. It suggests that millions of unsuspecting Masons who've been plugged into this Masonic energy current their whole lives through oaths and rituals.
Could essentially be energized or activated when this false Christ arrives?
The source uses a powerful analogy here. It says the collective spiritual energy lies dormant, like a computer virus waiting to be activated.
That is the ultimate conspiratorial view. And this concept extends into everyday cultural practices, things common in alternative health and wellness.
Practices that seem purely physical.
Are identified as occult practices that open these spiritual doorways because they rely on energy manipulation or altered states of consciousness.
What are the specific red flags the source material raises in the wellness space?
Practices like certain forms of yoga, tai chi, acupuncture, acupressure, and especially visualization techniques for wise persons,
Which are often presented as benevolent spirit guides.
are flagged as creating a spiritual vulnerability. The warning is that they either rely on manipulating specific energies tied to occult concepts, or they open you up to receiving instruction from entities that are, well, not benign.
So if ancient paganism relied on trance states and energy manipulation, the modern New Age just repackages that same principle into a consumable wellness product.
It connects the historical shamanistic roots directly to modern therapeutic modalities.
Which implies a highly sophisticated, multi-generational hidden operation where symbols aren't just decorative, they're tools of spiritual bondage.
The documents insist this is the case. I mean, think about the inverted pentagram. It's a clear occult symbol, but it's the signet of the Order of the Eastern Star, despite its supposedly Christian facade.
And this symbol, used by millions,
Is claimed to act like that computer virus, establishing a spiritual link waiting to be activated in millions of unsuspecting initiates.
it forces you, the listener, to critically analyze every single seemingly neutral symbol and practice you encounter in daily life. If this source material is accurate, the spiritual war zone is so much broader than just the church or the coven. It extends into health, politics, community leadership, even the symbols on buildings and jewelry. The control mechanism is total.
It suggests you have to reckon with the possibility that the systems you trust the most, from your local leaders to your wellness routine, might be serving a hidden master plan centered on the unification of mankind under a Luciferian doctrine.
Wow. This has been an extraordinarily intense deep dive into material that, few people ever willingly confront this stuff, let alone analyze it in such detail.
From Nimrod to the Archdukes of Hell, yeah.
To leave our listeners with the most impactful takeaways, let's hit them with a rapid-fire recap of the biggest bombshells from this source material.
Okay. To recap the core revelations on these elite occult covenants.
1. The Great Inversion. High-level secret societies, especially Freemasonry, allegedly follow a pure philosophical religion centered on Lucifer, who they see as the god of light and good, in a conflict with Adonai, the god of darkness.
2. Psychological warfare. Conditions like multiple personality disorder are claimed to be systematically exploited or even deliberately created by elite covens to secure permanent trauma-based secrecy among ritual abuse survivors.
3. Spiritual strongmen. Occult entities like Legion manifest paradoxical symptoms that intentionally create a precise look-alike for MPD, while high-level practitioners are allegedly guarded by assigned, powerful spiritual entities known as Archdukes of Hell.
4. Therapeutic danger. Common therapeutic tools like hypnosis are alleged to have direct, dangerous occult roots tied to shamanism, potentially invoking the spirit of divination Pythoness, which creates profound spiritual vulnerability.
5. Physical access points. Occult object links from hair clippings to deliberate metal implants and chakra points are claimed to function as physical access points for magical power and demonic bondage, establishing a legal ground for control.
And 6. The global channel. The ultimate goal of many modern cults, including Masonry and the New Age, is the illumination of mankind under a false Christ figure, Lord Maitreya, with the Masonic Lodge allegedly serving as the essential political and spiritual channel for this to happen.
So whether you see these connections as historical coincidence, the product of mass delusion, or evidence of a deep, coordinated, multi-generational network controlling society, the Urban Odyssey mission is consistent. We bring the suppressed evidence into the harsh light of critical analysis.
And if the deception is this layered, if it requires infiltrating the legal system and co-opting wellness practices, what level of systemic control is actually necessary to keep the whole operation hidden?
The question you have to carry forward is this. If the system is designed to mistake spiritual control for psychological illness, and if the tools meant to heal are actually opening doors to infestation, what is the single safest action you can take right now to secure your own personal sovereignty?
An unsettling thought to end on, but one required by the source material.
Thank you for diving into the shadows with us. Don't miss the continuing investigation. Subscribe to theofficialurban.substack.com for the full, written deep dive into this network's history and its influence today.
And thread this discussion on X with #UrbanOdysseyTruth.
We want to hear your analysis. Reply directly to @officialurbanus. Until next time, keep seeking the light hidden in the darkness.